super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart FarmCast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. I hope you are doing very, very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition. Traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. Have I mentioned that knitting is my favorite winter activity? Things have slowed down, and I can have some time to catch up on my knitting projects. The garden has been put to bed. I'm still making cheese, butter, and yogurt, but canning is done for the season. I've even gotten all of the frozen fruit out of the freezer from this past spring and made the promised cherry and blueberry jams. I had to skip over them early in the spring because I just didn't have time, and they went in the freezer. They're done now. And for the first time, I made brandied figs. This and so much more coming up in this podcast episode. But first, welcome to all my new listeners and a hearty holiday season. Welcome back to the veteran homestead-loving regulars who stop by the FarmCast for every episode. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you all so much. Let's get on with some homestead updates. First, let's talk about the animals. Now, we love all of our animals. What would our homestead be without our animals? Pretty boring, don't you think? Let's talk about the cows. Finally, we have good news on that bovine front. We believe that all of the cows are now bred. Glory be to God. Natural breeding is superior by far. We have one calf scheduled for birth on March 5th, 2023, and then the next two will be around the 16th of July. Like, what is that, 4 months later? A little more than 4 months later. And then the bull comes along, and we have 6 that will give birth between the 4th of August and the 4th of September. And here's the rundown. Princess is a lovely purebred A2 Jersey heifer, soon to be a cow, and she's giving birth to that first calf around the 5th of March. We used sexed AI semen for her, so her calf will be 50% Jersey and 50% Normandy, and likely a girl, a heifer. And she looks great, and we are anticipating great genetics in her calf. She is small, and so is her mom. Not quite miniature Jerseys, but close. Rosie is her mom, and in her first lactation cycle, she was giving us about 3 gallons of milk per day, and we will expect a similar amount from Princess. And then we plan on selling her in the near future as we move to a 100% registered Normandy herd. Keep your ears open about when she comes up for sale, as she will make a fantastic milk cow for some lucky family. Now, speaking of Rosie, she is in the second group of 2 that are giving birth near the middle of July. Rosie is also a registered A2 Jersey, and she was bred via AI to the full-blood French bull named Jacaranda. The semen was unsexed, so the gender of her calf will be a surprise. This calf will be 50% Jersey, 50% Normandy also. And we will be keeping heifer calves that are 50% Normandy, but like her daughter, Rosie, will come up for sale sometime in the near future. Again, registered A2 Jersey cow. She's a great animal as well. Then also there's a second animal that's giving birth in mid-July, and that's Ginger. She is 75% Normandy, and that means she is not recognized as purebred, but her offspring will be, as their percentage will be high enough to meet the minimum standard. And the sire there is also that full-blood French bull Jacaranda. And then the last group of 6 are all bred via Ferdinand. You will recall that he is the Guernsey bull that we purchased a couple of months ago. He did his job well. In 1 month, just 2 hormonal cycles, because they cycle every 3 weeks. So in those 2-3 week cycles, he has impregnated all of our remaining cows and heifers. At least it appears so as of this recording. The vet will be here in January to do preg checks on everybody and let us know how everything is going with our cows. I'm not sure if we will be able to register his offspring, Ferdinand's offspring, as a 50% Normandy. I'll have to check on that. Violet, Virginia, and Wanda are all purebred Normandys, but it may not be enough for proper registration. We shall see. It might be that the bull has to be Normandy to get into the registration. I don't know. We'll see. Butter, who is also a registered A2A2 Jersey, and the last two, Molly and Cookie, are mostly, but not registered Jersey cows. So Molly is 75% Jersey. I'm not sure how much Jersey that Cookie has, but neither one of those are registered Jersey cows, though they are also A2A2. Now, we will be keeping Molly as she does have that other 25%, which is Normandy genetics. But again, Butter and Cookie will be moving on to another family. So in the end, 4 of our cows will be up for sale in the next year or 2. They are all great animals. Again, you've heard me talk about them, but we're building our 100% Normandy herd. Each year we will probably move out a couple more as we slowly inch toward our preferred genetic goals. So as we, some of the 50% Normandy Jerseys will also eventually move on, but that's, a few years down the road before we have enough of our own full blood Normandys that we'll be ready to get rid of our 50%ers. Anyway. Now, we also have Nickel waiting in the wings to get big enough to be our breeding bull. So Ferdinand will have one more go-round of breeding our cows, and then we will also sell him. And as you can tell, he is a great bull and will be a wonderful addition to someone's herd. And then after that, Nickel will be our herd bull for, a couple of 3 years. And we will also continue using AI as we can just to improve the herd genetics. We want those 100% French purebred or full-blood bulls genetics getting into our herd. So Scott is coming on board as our primary AI technician. And this is a really great piece of news that I have to share. I mentioned in the last podcast that the idea was for Scott to be able to attend an AI workshop and learn to do the procedure himself. And so he can jump in there exactly whenever he's needed, because we know when they're in heat, and boom, we could get it done right then and there and not have to wait on the vet. So hallelujah, he was able to attend an AI Tech training session just a couple of weeks ago, the first week of December, and it was literally only an hour away, and so we made it happen so that he could attend. He now knows the basics of how it is done and what challenges he may face, and we have lots of cows for him to practice on as he builds his skill. So the first day he came home from the workshop training session a little frustrated with his lack of skill. According to him, it is much harder than it looks from the outside. And then on the second day of training, he got the hang of it, and all that is left now is for him to practice. And the very next time that any of our cows get bred, Scott will be trying out his new skills. Now, this is months and months from now, but we are both excited about the prospects of being able to use AI much more effectively. We will share how that goes when we get there. The timing of this training the training session was truly a blessing from God for it to be just when we needed it and just an hour away. So glad we were able to accomplish that. Now let's move on to the livestock guardian dogs. There's not much to say here. I am still feeling so blessed that Finn returned after 6 months of roaming the countryside. We are still treating an infection in his left eye. It is a stubborn infection. Sometimes his eye is clear and then it'll cloud up again. So just today we aggressively upped the amount of antibiotic cream we're using in that eye to see if we can knock out that infection once and for all. And otherwise he's putting on weight. He's very happy to be home. And there was an early escape and one a day or so ago that was my fault for letting him loose with an open gate. But he is still with us and not escaping on a regular basis. Charlotte is going along just fine. Sometimes she tolerates me petting her. Sometimes she still won't let me near her. I just go along and pet her when I can. She's a great dog, and I love her so much. Both Finn and Charlotte are currently with the sheep and the goat doelings, the baby goats that we just got. There are a couple of calves in there as well. I forgot to talk about Jill and Penny. Jill is currently up for sale if you know of anyone looking for a young heifer calf, and we will be keeping Penny. Penny is 50% Jersey, 50% Normandy, and all is well in that pasture for the moment. Jill is came out of Cookie, so Cookie is unregistered, but she's mostly Jersey and some other things, and Jill also is going to be mostly Jersey. So if you know anybody looking for a young Jersey heifer calf, there she is. She's maybe 6 months old. Now Mac is with the cows, and they don't really need him. But what else are we going to do with him? At some point, I would like to see all of the dogs and animals together. But as you know, he killed one of the chickens, and so I had to get him away from where the chickens are just roaming around, where something else is going to happen with them to be able to contain them. But anyway, I'm not sure all the dogs will ever end up together. We will always have heifer calves that need to be kept away from the bull, and vice versa. Or the bull is kept away from the heifers and calves. So either the bull is in with the main cow herd, or the bull is completely away from the main cow herd. But there's always those heifer calves that can be with the main cow herd as long as the bull's not in there. But anyway, right now the bull is in with the cows, and so the calves are over there with Finn and Charlotte and the sheep. And then we have ewe lambs and doelings that'll need to be kept away from the breeding ram, and so on. So again, we're probably never going to be able to have just one group of animals and all the dogs together. Pretty sure we're always going to have two groups of animals. The best that I can hope for is that all of the animals and dogs will eventually become kind of interchangeable. At the moment, I don't trust the large animals with Finn and Charlotte. I think the animals might be aggressive with my dogs, and I don't want my animals aggressive with my dogs, and I don't trust the small animals with Mac. So there you have it. I don't know. This may be our standard operating procedure going forward. I'll keep you posted on that. So everything going pretty well. Now for a little update on the goats. Things are going fairly well in that area. I have managed to tame all of the goats a fair bit, much more than the sheep even. They will follow me everywhere if they think there might be a treat at the end of the road. And all are growing nicely. It will be another 2 months before the girls can meet up with the boy. Leon and Amis are with the sheep, and Ruark is right next door in the lower garden with a ram lamb as a companion. And as soon as the girls are old enough, these two boys will be able to join the main group of sheep and goat girls. And speaking of the sheep, several ewes are looking quite plump. I expect that we will have lambs in January or February. Not the best time of year, but I have found that these Katahdin sheep are really good moms, and the lambs are generally hardy even in winter. If the weather is particularly bad, we can take them to shelter. Otherwise, this breed is very used to giving birth out in the pasture, even in the winter. And I have actually heard of several breeders that specifically breed for birthing in January and February, as they're looking for their lambs to reach market size by the time November rolls around. And that's when the various religious groups are looking for lamb and goat for their feasts. And we may look at that market as well, but otherwise we like to keep ours all the way up to the 12th month of growth. So we generally birth them April, May-ish. We just needed to get back in the groove and see if we can maybe have 2 groups of lambs this year. So January, February, and then again maybe in the fall. So we shall see. Sometimes they won't breed out of season. But again, I'll keep you posted. The sheep have dogs protecting them at the moment, and I expect that we will actually have lambs soon, and we'll be able to raise them to market weight without predators running off with them. At least that is the current expectation. The last 2 years, as if you've been listening along, have been devastating for us with the predators. But I think we have that. I think we have it under control with the dogs. We'll see. The last animals to discuss are the chickens. Now, last time I mentioned that Mac had made mincemeat of one of the hens, and we still have all the rest of the hens and roosters. And just a few days ago, we added 6 new hens to the flock. One of our herd share members had more chickens than she wanted, and she gifted us these hens. And we're not sure whether they are cinnamon queens or Rhode Island Reds. Either way, They are providing us a couple more eggs a day. My hunch is that 5 of the 6 are actually Rhode Island Reds and only 1 Cinnamon Queen, but we will see as we go along, as they mature, how their colors flesh out. Now, of the 11 other hens that we have, we're getting 2 or 3 eggs per day. So we added half as many hens, only 6 hens were added, but we doubled our egg production. Now we're getting 5 or 6 eggs per day. Go figure. I don't know if I mentioned that I'm looking at perhaps changing my mind of what breed of chickens that we raise. There are always good logical reasons for the breeds we choose for any given animal. And you'll find this too as maybe you're working through some of this stuff. The literature, however, seems to be flawed on the chicken breeds that I chose. I expected way more eggs from the American Bress and the Black Copper Marans, and it seems that the traditional Rhode Island Reds are just better at producing eggs. I'll have to look it up, and it may be that they are primarily egg producers and not a dual breed chicken. I'm not really sure about that, but in the end, I may just give up on the whole dual breed idea for chickens. I'm really in it for the eggs anyway. We just don't eat that much chicken, so the meat is not really a big deal, but we eat a lot of eggs. And that's for another day. It's winter now, so in the spring we will do some incubation and hatch out some birds and see where we go from there. In the end, we may just have mutt chickens and forget about trying to raise specific breeds. Right now, as long as they lay lots of eggs, I don't really care. So I don't have a rooster to go with the Rhode Island Reds and Cinnamon Queens. So they'll just go with whatever rooster I have. So again, if they lay lots of eggs, I'm okay with mutt chickens. All right. Now our big project always is that creamery. And where do we stand with that? Well, all of the floors are 99.9% complete. As I mentioned in the last podcast, Scott was racing the clock to get that done. The temperature-sensitive nature of the glue and grout were driving that carriage, and he made it. There were a few cold days where he had to wait, but in the end, he's got it done. There are a few details that he's working on for the pull box covers, but other than that, the floors are complete. Next up is the electrical, and of course the plumbing. That is still looming large in my mind. I don't know how he'll do it, but I do know that he will make it happen. It's just who he is as a person. I love him so much. At the moment, he is moving his attention to fixing fences in the back fields. There is a good bit of standing hay back there, but so that the cows can graze back there without having to put rolled hay up. But the trees on the fences need to be cleared, and those fences need to be repaired so the cows aren't all over the place. And another task on his calendar is gathering up pine wood for the wood stove this winter, because we could be using it right now, but we don't have any pine. We have lots of good hardwood, but you got to have a little bit of pine to get that hardwood going. For the past 2 winters, we've not used the wood stove as other priorities and factors interfered with the collecting of wood. And this year should be the time that we get back on track with using wood for fuel in the winter, and we will get that electric bill way down to a reasonable cost, especially at this time in our economy when prices are rising. These tasks will take away from the time he has in the creamery, but I'm pretty sure we're still on track for USDA certification sometime in the spring or summer of 2023. Hallelujah. Alrighty, now on to my knitting, cheese making, and other milk products. And I want to talk a little bit about cheese making and the other stuff that I'm making before getting into my knitting projects. Because we have had so much problem getting cows pregnant, we are currently planning to milk the cows as long as we can before drying them up for birthing their calves. At least 2 months before they give birth, they will be dried up and we won't have milk at that time. But Princess should have given birth, so we'll have her milk. And normally that would be a 1-year cycle. This time it's going to be nearly a year and a half. Their milk production will continue to decline over time, and the cold of winter will also decrease milk production. These are additional days of learning and having new trials of which we have yet to have. So it'll be a whole new thing milking cows through the winter. We're not really set up for milking cows through the winter. So this is going to be really interesting. The water lines can freeze, and anyway, that's the hardest thing is what are we going to do for the water? I found out that even the cleaning solutions that we iodine that we use for disinfecting their udders and keeping their udders clean during the milking, those things were freezing, because I was milking on my own while Scott was gone, and that was a that was a crazy time. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that right now. But currently the cows are still producing enough for herd share milk and for me to make some cheese. And I'm perfecting my techniques in cheese making and trying a couple of new ideas to improve flavor. We shall see in a few months if my efforts have paid off. So that's always a work in progress. At this point, still a work in progress, developing those deep cheese flavors. Additionally, I'm still making yogurt a couple times per week and butter every other week or so. It's a bit of a different winter experience to still be dealing with milk after the end of November. It's a first, but it seems to be working out great for both Scott and myself so far. I'm happy to continue the creative art of dealing with dairy products. Now, my favorite winter pastime is knitting. In the summer, it's all about the garden, planting, weeding, harvesting, canning, and so on. But in the winter, things slow down, and I get to take somewhat of a break. And what do I do with all that free time? Well, to be honest, there really isn't that much free time. But I just do a lot of stuff that was put off because I was in the garden and in the kitchen for every hour of every day in the summer. So there's just not long hours of days. So in a typical 8-hour day, my 8-hour day is still pretty much in force with everything that we have to do around here. So it's not like I have a ton of free time. Anyway, it's so funny that I have these knitting projects that sit for months on end without any progress whatsoever. And then winter comes and I can work on them. And do I get them finished? Well, it depends on the project. So what I'm going to talk about is I have this Victorian newborn set knitting pattern that I've been working on literally for 2 years. And it's a beautiful baby layette. It has a blanket, a bonnet, booties, and a sweater. And it is a Victorian-themed pattern, lacy edges, and cream or off-white, cream color, kind of a base color. And then there's a contrast color of burgundy. I'll put a picture on the Locals platform, and maybe I can work one in on the website so you can see what I'm talking about with these colors and this pattern. And I know I'll make it the featured photo on this podcast. Yeah, that could work. So the picture of the layette that I'm making is going to be my featured photo for the podcast. And again, it'll be on my Locals platform as well. So I started working on this at least 2 years ago, as I said, and it is the most difficult project that I have ever done. And first, it was all about getting the pattern correct. And I must have started over from the beginning at least 4 times. So that was the first year, just trying to get, this is the main blanket that I'm working on. And then the second year, and when I speak of years, remember that it is a few months in the winter. So it's not a whole year. It's just a few months of me working on this. And I'm a pretty good knitter, but this honestly is a complex project here, and I wanted to get it right. And anytime I would make a mistake, if I couldn't correct it, I would literally take it out and start over again, or undo 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows at a time, and it takes forever to undo stuff. But anyway, in the second year, it was all about starting that lacy edge. So the first year, I got the main part of the blanket done, and then there's a lacy edge all the way around. So as I was knitting up, I'm working into that lacy edge. And so I've taken out that part at least, I'm going to say 6 times. It was late in the winter, after taking it out 6 times, that I discovered that the pattern I was trying to use was flawed. So it wasn't me. And I just kept doing it over and over again. And it's like, this just isn't right. It doesn't look right. So here's that little story. As I get older, it's harder for me to read small print, and the pattern that I was using was already a year or more old, and the pages had stuck together and the print was mangled. So what did I do? Well, I searched online to try and find a, quote, clean copy of that pattern, and I did find one. So these are like copyrighted things, so it's hard to find them. If I couldn't, and this was several years old now, and so Hirschner's, where I had gotten it, had moved on to other things, and I couldn't get it from their website. So I did find a copy of the pattern, and it was great for the rosebud pattern, which would just be the main part of the blanket. It's the main theme in all of the pieces, actually. But then when it came to putting the rest of the pieces together, that pattern was a disaster. I finally looked at it and said, this just isn't going to work the way this is. And so what I did was, on the evening that I made the discovery that it was the pattern that was flawed and not my knitting skills, praise the Lord, I set out to recreate the pattern from the original. And so I did. I spent about an hour in Microsoft Word. Okay, it may have been more than an hour. At this point, I have no idea. I just know I needed the pattern to work. I typed out every single instruction, every detail, had my magnifying glass there so that I could see everything clearly. And then even the stuff that was all muddled up, I could figure out what it said, and then I could proofread what I had typed, and it all seemed to make sense. And I still have that original just in case I made a mistake, and I can go back with my magnifying glass and see if I can decipher what the actual instruction is supposed to be. However, I am pretty confident that I got it right. There is a pattern to patterns, and I could see it clearly, finally. After all, I had created it over and over again incorrectly. So when I saw the correct instruction, it made perfect sense. Instead of just reading the pattern, I looked at the whole thing of what the pattern was trying to accomplish, and then it made sense. Now, let me move on to my greatest achievement so far. Working that whole pattern thing out, that was a pretty good achievement, but that was just kind of a logical mistake in the pattern thing. I'm talking about the actual creation of the garment. A great achievement. I've never been successful in making joins look natural. My work has always looked sloppy. But this time, as I got started once again on this adventure with the correct pattern, and then as I started working, I could clearly see that the pattern this time, I could clearly see that it was working. And I finished that first end of the blanket, and I was using a stitch that I had never done before, and that was a little difficult. But the instructions were clear, and it worked the very first time. Yippee! The bind off was just something I had never done before. And still, that's not the greatest achievement. No, the greatest achievement was picking up the stitches on the starting edge of that blanket. And YouTube helped me out there. I watched a couple of videos on how it is done. And in the past, I just did the best I could with the instructions, which read something like pick up and knit X number of stitches. And I don't know why it never occurred to me that there was an actual method to make it work smoothly. And so I watched these videos and gave their suggestions a try. Lo and behold, I created a seam that looks unbelievable. The top is just a continuation of the knitting. That's no problem. But the bottom has to be created as if it is a continuation. So when it says pick up and knit stitches, there's a certain way to pick those stitches up within each specific stitch to make it look like you're just continuing on that work, that you're not actually patching this together. I never knew I could do such good work. I've been knitting since I was 12 years old, and I will tell you, I am 67 years old. And I can't wait to start up the sides on this. Ever since I started when I was 12, I've never really been satisfied with the knitting that I'm doing. But this project is the best thing I've ever done, and I don't know what is different about it, except that I kept starting over and making it perfect. I kept doing it until I got it perfect. So maybe it's just my attitude about it, to do it perfect and not be satisfied with something that is less than what I want it to be. So again, I'm doing the bottom. I finished the top. I'm doing the bottom of the blanket, and then I have to do both sides of it. And I just can't wait to get started on that. I've already watched that video, and I will watch it again before I start on the sides, because again, I'm going to have to pick up all these stitches going up the side, and it's a different method to go up the side than it is on the bottom. All right, so first I do have to finish that bottom, and I have every confidence that I will make it look just as awesome as the top. Take a look at the picture to see what I am creating. This will be the most awesome knitting project I have ever done. Did I mention it was the hardest thing that I've ever attempted? It is going to give me confidence to make the other really complicated pieces. That sweater, hat, and booties are waiting in the wings, and that brings its own level of complication. The blanket's flat. The other pieces are not. Now, in closing, I must mention that once I finish these difficult pieces that I already have in progress, I'm going to switch to making hat, scarf, and mitten sets to give to the homeless. It's going to be my new mission for quite some time. These are much simpler projects, but with a great deal more purpose. I have all of this yarn and patterns for afghans and such that I've collected over the years. If you're a knitter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got closets and drawers and stuff full of yarn and projects that you're going to get to at some point. And large afghans are a lot of work. And when they're finished, I can only give it to one person. For the same amount of time and yarn, I can make something useful for those in need. And several somethings, in fact. And I don't really know how many hats, mittens, and scarves will come out of the vast amount of yarn in my closet, but I'm going to find out. So there you have it. That is the end of my knitting story for this podcast. I've got a great project and a new direction with my knitting for this winter. Probably will take me the rest of the winter to finish the complicated project, but I do hope to get on to those other projects, and for the rest of my knitting winters, probably am going to just be making things for others. Anytime that I have left that I can knit the hat, scarves, and mittens to help keep those homeless folks warm is going to be great. All right. Take a look at the pictures on my current project on our locals platform. That's peacefulheartfarm.locals.com. And that concludes this podcast. There's always something going on with the animals, and I love sharing our stories with you. I hope you have your own dreams going and adventures going on. It may be the trials and tribulation of your children, your career, or your family. Please share with us on our locals platform. We'd love to hear from you. And I hope you enjoyed my knitting story. I'm so excited to be getting back into the groove and feeding that creative impulse. What do you like to create? Let me know. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or whatever podcasting service you use. Subscribe. Give me a 5-star rating and a review. It really, really does help. If you like this type of content and want to help us out, the absolute best way you can do that is to share it on all of your social media platforms. It is absolutely the best way. Share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. Let them know about the Peaceful Heart FarmCast. And again, come over to our locals community where you can interact with everyone there. Subscribe at peacefulheartfarm.locals.com. We'd love to have your support and input in the community, and we'd love to help you out by answering your questions there. See you there. Thank you so much for stopping by our homestead, and until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.